Hey guys, this is Grant and doing a bit of a different video today. I wanted to take you along for a walk and just share my story as a Juno Award winning musician touring the world, being homeless on the streets as a teenager, my journey of personal development, starting, failing businesses, and everything I've learned in between. So stick around if you want to know more about that. 2015, just before my first son was born, I was going through a really bad moment of substance abuse. And I don't even know if I want to share what I was doing, but I will. I was addicted to methamphetamines for many, many years. And I justified it. I made up stories in my head why it was okay. Oh, I'm being more productive because I'm staying up all night and I'm researching and I'm writing music, and I'm not losing friends, I'm not losing a job or anything. So it was one of those things where I could kind of get away with it. And by doing that, it kind of got away from me. And I went many years quite addicted. And thankfully, I kind of kept on trying to quit, but I didn't have a big enough reason to. But when my son was conceived, and he was, destined to be born, that was a big enough reason to get me to stop and to get me to quit. Around this time, I was starting to get into kind of personal development because I had all this time at night because I wasn't sleeping. I was reading a lot. I started to get into reading nonfiction. This is when I started to kind of build out my businesses as well, my first business. And I realized that early on that the bottleneck to any business is always going to be on the leader. So for anything to change, the leader had to change. And this really got me on the topic of personal development. And, one book I think that really opened it up was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it was just, the main principle was just being present and being in the moment. The past doesn't exist. It's just a memory. The future doesn't exist because it hasn't happened yet. All we have is the present moment. And that was kind of the first time I started to think a little bit more introspectively. Oh, we're getting to a nice river here. And, I never really considered how the mind worked. I just kind of was just operating on autopilot, pursuing my dreams, my big vision. I never really stopping to think about why I wanted this, I don't think we stop and ask ourselves why enough. So this is when I started to ask the question of why in many different aspects of life. This is when I started to ask questions about why are we here to begin with at all? Why do humans exist? So I started to really research and be very curious of this question of who are we, where did we come from, why are we here, the big questions in life. For a while, I always considered nature to have some form of intelligence to it. After the Big Bang and everything coming into existence in one single point, the singularity where space, time, and matter all came into existence in one spot, one moment in time. And in that moment already had all of the laws of the universe, the underlying laws of physics, the laws of logic, already ingrained into the fabrics of the universe, and it was so perfectly fine-tuned for everything to work out the way it did, for the planets to be perfectly aligned with their mass and gravity, and to the point where life could form on Earth. It all seemed way too calculated to just be an accident. So for a good decade, I held a pretty firm belief that there was an intelligence to life, to the universe, but not really knowing what it was, or who it was, or how you could really fully understand it. And I just kind of accepted that I would never fully understand it, and would just marvel at the wonders of the universe. You know, that's kind of what I've been doing for the past decade. Everything I've learned about it just continues to reveal how beautiful and elegant the universe is. But this intelligence, if you just look at it as undirected intelligence, and you would come to the conclusion that it was good, then you're not really looking around, are you? Because if you looked in nature, there are very violent things that happen. If you look around in society, there's very unjust things that happen, very evil people who commit acts and get away with it. The good die young, the nice guy finishes last. And it's, if you just observe the universe, yes, it may be intelligent, but it could never convince you that it's good, right? But just like any person, to truly know somebody, they would have to reveal themselves to you. They would have to tell you their name, what they like. The more you spent time with them in relationship, you would find out more about them. And I've come to discover that this is similar with life and the universe. You can't get to know this intelligence that is behind reality by just observing it. Just like a body, if you took it and examined it, you could view that there's intelligence in it. Your organs work with each other. Your cells, when you examine it, the biology, wow, incredible intelligence. You could give a description of a person scientifically, but unless you actually knew that person and they opened up to you and revealed who they are, then you wouldn't actually know their character, their name, what they like, what they dislike, and their true nature. So similar is with the universe. So I kind of came to this conclusion that even though I realized it was a pretty intelligent universe, just by examining it alone, I would never truly know its true character. You couldn't come to the conclusion that it was good by just examining it alone because of the reasons I provided before. So that's what brought me to religion. And for the longest time, I always considered all religions kind of equally valid. They were all trying to explain in their own way the nature of the universe. So I first, obviously I first started with the Bible, reading about Christianity. I thought, cool, okay, Jesus, he was a good teacher. He had some really great ideas. He lived a really selfless life. Awesome. Old Testament, I was like, wow, this is just like a story of the history of people's thought around God, right? And it's just trying to account for their trying to create meaning out of what they see. I was like, okay, that's just their perspective, right? The story of Jesus was he was just a good prophet. He was a good teacher. Right, so then I went into Buddhism. Wow, some really great teachings there too. Right, how to relieve suffering, right, but giving up your desires. Some really good things there. I looked at the Tao Te Ching. Ooh, Tao Te Ching, that's actually one of my favorite ancient wisdom books. Very short book, written by a guy named Lao Tzu, supposedly. And some really great wisdom in there. So for the longest time, I just kind of cherry-picked all the good things I knew about it. And I was like, okay, this is all kind of explaining it in a different way. And you can kind of start to get to know the intelligence behind the universe through that. But then the further you examine it, the further you realize that there were some pretty exclusive claims in each of these. And the law of contradiction tells you that either they're all wrong or one of them is right. Because they can't all be right because they contradict each other. There's some similarities, yes, you know, like the golden rule, treat others like you would want to be treated, but there's very distinct contradictions in how a lot of these religions viewed the deity of Jesus, who was really the only one who claimed to be God coming in human form, right? So in Islam, Muhammad regarded Jesus as another great teacher, a great prophet. But Muhammad lived 500 years, 600 years after Jesus. So I don't know if he's the best one to get your information about an event, a historical event. So you gotta go closer to the eyewitnesses. Buddha, they said, oh, Jesus, he's got Christ consciousness. He attained Buddha, nirvana. Right? So all of these other religions, they all kind of point to Jesus as being one of the ways to heaven. They all held him in high regard. But Jesus was the only one who was like, no, I'm the only way. Which is like, okay, you kind of got to back up and be like, okay, he's not just a good teacher anymore. This guy is like pretty full of himself. But then he, allegedly backed up his claims by performing miracles, by resurrecting on the third day after his death, where over the course of 40 days, 500 people saw him in the flesh. And these people were willing to die for what they claimed to have seen. And, I've known a lot of people who have, well, I don't know personally, but, I'm sure we've heard of a lot of people dying for a belief. A lot of people will die for something they believe to be true, but these people were dying for something they claim to have seen, not just a belief. And all of the original apostles, except for one, died a violent death. So pretty hard to come up with a reason why they would all be in on this unless it was true. So, a few of these points, the fine-tuning of the universe, the complexity of even the smallest cell, moral absolutes, among many, many other things, but mainly the historic account of the life of Jesus and the claims that he did. Once you start to look deeper into it, as he said, if you seek, ye shall find. And I haven't been trying to prove any bias in any way. I haven't wanted to prove myself right. But after an earnest, good decade of soul searching, truth seeking, to find the truth, not to find what I want to be true, Because trust me, a Christian life is not an easier life. In many ways, I wish it weren't true. I could live a lot more selfishly. I wouldn't feel guilt when I even held hatred or lust in my heart. Before, when I had lust in my heart, if I saw a beautiful woman and I was like, ooh, she's hot, I wouldn't feel guilty about it. But now, as a Christian, man, I'm held accountable and responsible to that in my own mind, let alone what happens after this life. So this is kind of a long-winded story to kind of tell you how I've come to believe in Jesus Christ 100%. There's no way I could prove it, just like there's no way I could prove to you that I love my kids. You can't really prove anything in life, but I am convinced to the core of my being that that is true. And I don't want to make this a channel revolved around religion or Jesus, because I feel like anybody's journey is valid and we all are on our own path. And I'm not here to tell you how to do anything in a specific way, one way or the other. I'm just here sharing my own journey. And I respect you to disagree, to have your own beliefs, to come to your own conclusions. That's the beautiful thing about this life and this world, is that we have free will and we are free to make our own decisions. But let's just try to maybe wrap this up. I don't know how long this video is at this point, but I always felt like there was more I had to offer. And that is what I aim to achieve in Fusion Flow coaching. And it's my work with people one-on-one that truly gives me joy. Because yeah, playing in front of 50,000 people is great. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely still love it. It's my passion. I love creating music. But working with somebody one-on-one and being able to help them with something that will last for the rest of their life is the biggest gift that I could ever get. The biggest compliments and comments and messages I get is when somebody messages me telling me that something I did, said, at one point completely changed the way they live life now, and it helps them for the best. So this is my mission with this channel, is to share things that I've come to learn that have helped me on this path we call life. You know, if you have $1 billion and everybody wants to be you, but you live in anger and guilt and frustration every day, do you really have it all? Opposed to someone who has nothing. They're on the streets and they are living their most fulfilled life. And you know, I would argue that there's more to life than living on the streets for yourself, but think about where these two people live emotionally. In one way is so much more successful, but really it's about the quality of your emotions, and a lot of that is available to you at any point. At any point in your journey, you could start living the way you want to feel. You don't have to wait until you get all the accolades, all the credentials, all the money to start feeling a certain way. And sure, is money a good thing? Yes, I want to create a lot of money too. But it's not my end goal mission. My main mission in life is to inspire others to live a more fulfilled life, to provide for my family, my 2 kids, and my stepdaughter are the world to me. And to create a community and life and world that fosters the healthy development of young people, of everybody. So these are some of my dreams and missions that fuel what I do. And I'm happy to bring you guys along for the journey. If you made it this far in the video, then kudos to you. You truly are becoming one of my best friends. So I want to thank you guys for hanging out this whole time, and make sure to like and subscribe, all that fun stuff, and tell the algorithm that you like this kind of content. And let me know, you guys, if there's any part of my story that you want me to go deeper into, or if there is something that resonated with you more than others in this video. Did you like this type of video that I filmed here, just off the cuff, no script, taking a walk? I don't mind it at all. I like walking in nature, so an excuse to get out here and film in the great outdoors here in Vancouver is a-okay to me. So I'll catch you guys on the next video. I hope you have a great day. Bye.